Thank you, Stephen. I'm now happy to present our next guest, Lindab. With over 6 years of experience, Lindab has been a pioneer in delivering energy-efficient ventilation solutions to over 1,500 building projects across Europe. We're excited to welcome Matilda Isaksson, Group Sustainability Manager at Lindab, in conversation with Erik Björn, Regional Business Development Manager at OneClick LCA, to talk about how Lindab went from compliance to transformation and their journey in decarbonizing products with EPDs and LCA. Matilda, thank you so much for being here today. Can you please introduce yourself and Lindab?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here talking about this subject. It's really one of my favorite topics to talk about. So my name is Matilda. I'm working as Group Sustainability Manager for Lindab. I've been working at Lindab for 8 years, so times really goes fast when you have fun. And we have been on a great journey, and we still are, so that have been lovely to work with. But Lindab, I will say some words about that as well. Lindab is a company that manufactures ventilation products. We manufacture products mainly in steel, and steel stands for the majority of our emissions. But ventilation, to put that into context a little bit more, is what we deliver is energy efficient solutions that deliver a good indoor climate for occupants in buildings. And I also want to highlight that we just got our science-based targets approved, so that's also a big milestone for us to achieve.
Thank you so much, Matilda. And Erik, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Frida, for having me. So Erik Björn, I work as the Nordic Business Development Manager at OneClick LCA, and I have been with the company for 2.5 years now. I have a background in environmental engineering with a master's in sustainable technology, and have been working many years in LCA and EPD consultancy before joining OneClick LCA.
Thank you, Erik. So now let's get into today's discussion. So Matilda, what motivated Lindab to work with EPD development, and how does it help meet Lindab's sustainability goals?
That's a very good question. I think it started many years ago. We started to get some questions from customers asking, do you have EPD? Do you have this data? And yeah, it started in some markets. And first for us, it was a paper product, to be honest. We just needed to do this to give the customers what they were asking for. And I also think that it was a paper product from customers to start with as well. That was more of a check in the box exercise. And when we started this journey, we took help from consultants. We were part of this development program in Sweden, working with the Swedish Environmental Institute. I was the one to do it from Lindab. But we also realized that when we took so much help externally, we really didn't understand the data. And then we didn't understand that EPD was so much more than a paper product. We then decided to do it internally instead. And all of a sudden, we got a lot of information that really helped us on our sustainability journey, and still do. I think LCA is a fantastic tool to use to get to know your products in a better way. You get really good insights from what drives the environmental impact, where do you need to focus your resources, and what really matters. So that has been great to get that knowledge within the company.
And like you mentioned, you decided to develop in-house EPD capabilities instead of external consultants. Can you dive a little deeper in the advantages that you discovered in this approach?
Yeah, I think when we decided then to go also to do this in-house, we started looking at different solutions out in the market, and we realized, okay, there are not so many. I think there are more now. It's of course an evolving landscape. We also saw that some of the solutions were very complex, and we felt like, okay, we are no experts in LCA. That's really a profession. Now we have that profession within Lindab, but we didn't have then. And then we found OneClick LCA, and I met Erik for the first time, and we realized, okay, LCA, OneClick LCA is the software that we understood is a little bit like LCA and EPD for dummies. You get a lot of support. And that's why we decided to go for that solution. And also Lindab, I think Erik also helped us a lot on the journey. We had a lot of discussions back and forth. And yeah, it took a long time before we also decided. But now I'm happy that we went for this choice.
And it's been a true pleasure to work with Lindab for these couple of years, and have learned a lot about you. And I know that you have a very decentralized organization, and the strategy as a company is to acquire a lot of other business. So having worked and integrated this knowledge now in-house, how are you working to kind of expand the knowledge throughout your organization? And could you perhaps tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, like you're saying, we are a very decentralized organization, and we are on this growth journey where we are acquiring a lot of companies, and that's also like contributes to more decentralization, at least right now. And what we have seen, we have discussed a lot of things. How should we do this in the most effective way? How do we get the most benefits? And what we realized is that if we do this from a central way, it will be an internal paper product, just like you use an external consultant. It will be like you have internal consultants instead. So for us, it's been very important to really push this work out in the organization, that each company, they need to be responsible to do this. Right now, we have an organization where we are divided into different regions, and there we have regional sustainability specialists that are also becoming experts within LCA and EPD, and they support the different companies within the region to get this work going. But really, when you have it locally, you get to know your data. You're responsible, like collecting the data, how good quality is it, what can we do to get better data? And then when you get the EPD, you understand the result. It makes sense. You get to know where do I need to focus my resources? What can I actually do? So I would say that the local work with LCA also create the ambition to really drive actions. Because in the end, we want the numbers to also be competitive. So say that, EPD have a validity time for 5 years. The next time we publish it, the numbers should be better. So that's also something to really create that ambition and knowledge internally. But of course, it's been challenging. It's EPD and LCA is very complex. So we're still on the journey to develop the internal knowledge in the different companies. Some markets have started, some markets have not. So we're also like listening into the market, who needs it the most, and try to focus around that.
Super interesting. And now, can you tell a bit more about Lindab's product development strategy and the role that EPDs and LCAs play in that?
Yeah, I mentioned like our products, mainly ventilation products. I think it's important to understand a little bit more about ventilation. But if we look at the buildings, the largest share of the climate impact from the building sector comes from the use phase of the buildings. And ventilation play a crucial role in decarbonizing buildings, and also to achieve, energy performance of building directive, energy efficiency directive that is coming now from European Union, really push for buildings to become more energy efficient. And our products is really key to achieve that. So when we are looking into development of products, we really focus on the performance. We really need to have this very high energy efficiency grade, but we must also not forget about the occupants of the buildings. The products that we develop needs to deliver a good indoor climate. And now I think we also need to take our responsibility for how we make the products and what they are made of. So that's also something that maybe our industry have not needed to focus on so much. We could have just blaming everything on the usage phase, but now we're really taking responsibility for the materials and the product development in another way. So that's also great to see. And talking a little bit about Lindab and what we have done, we were the first company to get deliveries of fossil-free steel. We are using recycled steel. And then the LCA and EPDs are really key to help us to understand what the difference it makes on a product level. Where can we switch without it influencing the price? I think sustainability and the business offer really needs to go hand in hand. So that's something where we use LCA to understand.
Yeah, and in my conversations with a lot of customers, I hear like eco design directive coming next year, and I'm a little bit curious how is Linda preparing for that from next year?
Yeah, it's I think I see so many benefits with this increased legislation that is coming, but it's also very challenging. Definitely, and I think for bigger companies, we might have the muscles to do it, but we also have a complexity with us. Many different ERP system, many different places where we store data, and so. Lindab is on a wider digitalization journey on how to work more efficient and smarter. So we really need to make better processes internally to get this type of data. But looking at the product, so I think the main requirement that is the most challenging is that you need to have the digital product passport for each product. And that's the passport needs to contain a lot of information. And one of them is GVP values, so data from the LCA and the EPD. So that's also something that is guiding us, that we need to do this, both from a market perspective for internal use, but also now from legislation. So we will have for sure a high focus on this as well. But honestly, I would say that I think the digital product passport will comes with a lot of benefits, but it's also how we use the data that we have in the passport. So we use it to actually design smarter ventilation system, to use it in the different digital softwares that we have, CAD, BIM, whatever, to really design right from the start. Because looking at product development that we talked about earlier, that's where you make the decisions that influence the environmental impact most.
Yeah, and so, yeah, you're mentioning there's a lot of legislation coming in Europe the coming years, and I know here in Sweden, where we're based, ventilation products is not hit by the building regulations for LCAs. So, but Lindab has been working with this for a couple of years now, and I guess it's like customer demands which has driven this. And could you perhaps expand a little bit more about that? What made you get started, and what's your customer saying?
Yeah, for sure, it's been a customer demand. That's where it all started, and we really see that some markets are more mature. They are asking for this, and now it's like a hygiene factor. You need this to be able to sell. While some markets, they have not started, they don't know what it is. So it's a big difference. But I see that I would say like Finland, Norway, Denmark, Sweden is so far leading in this, or like also on the demand level. But like you're saying, we're in Sweden, we're not hit by the legislation for buildings. And we are in the new proposal, however, whenever that will be made official. But we see also that many property owners, they don't wait for legislation. They go before. They realize that they need to do this. But I think from Lindab's side, what we're really pushing for in our different branch organizations where we are active, and both on European standardization level and in different countries, we really need to focus on the whole life cycle. We cannot just focus on the materials. Looking at our products, like I said before, we have energy efficiency is key and indoor climate is key. And now we need to decarbonize the materials that we use in the product. And those three aspects, they need to have equal value. Because if we're staring blindly at just one aspect, then we will fail to deliver on the other ones. And I think we will have both sub-optimized products and definitely sub-optimized buildings. Okay, it's difficult and it's complex, but I don't see that we can do it in another way if we really want to have a sustainable building industry.
And what feedback have you received from customers regarding your sustainable products, and how has this feedback influenced your future product developments?
I think we are really pushed by mostly, I would say, the property owners and the developers to develop products with lower environmental impact from the materials. Lindab were one of the first companies to launch a duct system, to distribute the air in recycled steel, and that lowered the climate impact with 60%, looking at the GVP fossil value. And we have received a lot of good feedback, but I will also be honest that the recession in the building industry, it's been challenging for us. Right now, these products is a bit more expensive than the traditional ones, and with the recession, there is limited possibilities to invest. But I think definitely we have received good responses from customers, and we see it as a really good competitive advantage to have these offers. And also they are asking for the EPD, so that's been really key for us. When we deliver and claim to have this more sustainable, greener product, we really need to have the evidence. For Lindab, it's very important with the transparency and the accuracy in these claims, and EPD and LCA is really key in order for us to deliver that.
And what are Lindab's key sustainability priorities and initiatives for the coming years?
We will, of course, like I said, we just got our science-based targets approved. The targets are very challenging, but it's definitely needed. For Scope 1 and Scope 2, we have higher ambitions than what is required. We have transition plans in place. So we will, for example, continue the journey to transition to renewable electricity, which of course have a high influence on the EPDs and LCAs as well. For Scope 3, we have a lot of focus on the steel. That stands for 50% of the Lindab Group emissions. So that is one, really the action that will create the most change. And also looking at the product level, I think steel stands for roughly 80 to 95% for more standard passive products, so to say. So that's really focus. And then we talked about the ESPR earlier, so increased design for circularity to really be careful with resources is also a priority going forward, because both customers and legislation is pushing for that. So it's a lot of exciting things that is happening within circularity as well.
It's interesting, and having worked with Lindab now for a couple of years, I know that like your goal for end of 2025 is to have 50% coverage of global sales for EPD. So expanding a little bit about that. So when do you think you will have 100% coverage? And I know that's a big question. And what are like the main challenges or more important aspects to consider when scaling up this work so much?
I think the target we said is very focused on volume. So we have some really high running products. So I mentioned the duct system before. When we did the EPD for that, we took a giant step in the target, and we will achieve it for 2025. But going forward, we also need to consider more the strategic angle. For what products does it create most value to make an EPD? Where does the customer want it? And so that's also aspects to consider. So it's very difficult to say when we will have 100%, because I think we also will focus on products with less volume going forward. And then share of sales covered by EPD will not increase so fast. But I really think to have the internal knowledge and focus on that will also enable us to speed up the process. And we talked before about, I mentioned the digital journey that Lindab are onto, where we really see that we also need better ways of doing EPDs. We cannot have it so manually. We need to have more streamlined processes internally. To try to automatize it a bit more, and then it will also go faster. So that's also something we're looking into, how to make it in a smarter way, because we want to focus on action as well. So that's really key.
And now to wrap up today's session, Matilda, when reflecting on Lindab's evolution from basic compliance to comprehensive EPD implementation, what 3 key takeaways would you share with other companies that want to take the next step in their sustainability journey?
I would really recommend, I think I've said it many times, but do this in-house. But of course, take help from consultants. That Lindab do that as well. Some products are way more complex than others, and we need somebody to speak to and discuss certain strategies with. So But I would really say that do this internally, because then EPD is more of an investment related to the business opportunity, because you get data on how to do things better. And also resource efficiency, that is one key aspect to work with EPDs. It also saves money. So I think that case will be stronger if you do it internally. And yeah, EPD is also, it's another world, I would say. It's a lot of knowledge you need, so it can be a little bit terrifying. But don't be afraid. I think you just need to get started. Take help from industry organizations. Try to discuss with colleagues in the industry. Not maybe how to do it in detail, but trying to set up some boundaries. This is how we want to do it. We have really driven that work within ventilation from Lindab side, because then we get the true value. Because in the end, we know that customers, they compare the EPDs, maybe not always in the building context as it says in the standard, but if we don't do things similarly, we lose the comparativeness, and then it will not help to support the selection of products in a better way. Third key takeaway, I would also say, like, really look into your processes, how to do this in a smart way, and decide already who should have the ownership, so you get the actions that is based on the result of the EPD.
Thank you so much for sharing, Matilda, and thank you, of course, Matilda and Eric, for joining us today. And now, for everyone watching, please stick around for more to come.